No.
Right, I'm going to call into session the regular meeting of the Jefferson School Committee, October 7th, 2024. Roll call, Andy Bernier.
Here.
Wayne.
Here.
Maria. Here. Adam.
Here.
And then myself. Administrator attendance, Janet, Laura, and Todd, and Peter may be joining us later.
Bringing some stuff up.
So if we can stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And agenda adjustments.
Yes, I would like to add the application for bus number 1 for the Department of Education bus reimbursement program. That needs to be done in November.
You want that added to the November agenda?
I want this agenda just so we make sure we don't forget it or miss it next, because if we do it now, at least you'll know it has to be done in November.
I got it. I've already made a note for the November agenda to put it on there, but if you want to discuss it, we still can. Plus 1-14.
And then, do we have any public comment?
Anyone sign up? I don't think there's.
I don't think anyone signed up, right? All right, moving on. We have no presentations tonight. Like a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on September 5th. All in favor? Okay. The chair report, the next regular meeting of the school board will be November 4th, 2024 at 6 p.m. The next meeting of the AOS board will be on October 17th, 6 p.m. Do we know where yet?
No.
Place is still to be determined. And then Wayne, I thought I'd turn it over to you if you had an AOS 93 report from the last meeting.
Yep, we met and we voted on new office positions, official positions, chairman of the AOS, vice chair, treasurers. There was some discussion on if Great Salt Bay was going to withdraw, whether one of their people should be chairperson or not. That kind of fell on deaf ears to a certain degree, and he re-elected Sam Belknap as chair. And then the rest of the night was taken up from discussion about the ESC and the likelihood of whether it would pass or not. It seemed pretty well consensus that it would not pass amongst most of the schools probably. Some of the biggest hang-ups was voting. It was the biggest discussion, I think. And then one of the other hang-ups was whether you had to take all the services or just 2 services. Some people didn't like that at all. There's no real way that thing could function by choosing just 2 services. I mean, it could function, but it would be a bookkeeping nightmare to a certain degree, and an accounting, budgeting nightmare as well, I think. So I think everybody pretty much left there with the opinion that it would not pass. So
I attended. It was a really good discussion, quite civil. So it was very nice to kind of see that working together. And then there is nothing to report for Cat C.
And I believe Walter was the rep, because I got an email from the Kennebec Valley Technical Center and it had him listed as a rep. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what, I'm going to their first meeting.
Okay.
It's 17th or 18th, I think, whatever the Friday is. So I'll get more details, but we may need to find someone, if someone's interested in taking his spot on that.
we have one student there, right?
I'm not 100% sure.
I think that's what I saw.
That's
Yeah.
the last I knew, yes.
Yeah.
So I will get more information about
That would be great. And then I'm going to pass it over to you, Todd, for superintendent's report.
Yeah, the MSNA Fall Conference, if any members of the board want to participate in that, that's coming up. That is the 24th and 25th of October. So if there are any board members who want to participate in that, just let me know, and we'll make sure we get you registered for that. The NEASS Regional Conference was last week down in Westbrook, Connecticut. I went to that. I was down there for 2.5 days, 3 days. That's New England Association of School Superintendents. So I participated in that. District-related information. The ESC was the big topic item, and we've got that as a motion later. And that's really what I have right now for that. I did get a pretty lengthy board handbook that I'm going to share with you electronically. I don't want to waste the paper, just so you'll have it for reference. It may be something you've seen before. It may not be something you've seen before, but just take it for what it is. And the training, the board training is, if anyone wants to go, that is the 9th, which is Wednesday. So it's before the Great Salt Bay board meeting. So
Should we RSVP to that if we want to go?
No, I
Or
don't
we
think
just
so. I
Okay.
think you can just show up.
Okay.
And that'll be at Great Salt Bay. So if you get that handbook, I'll send that handbook out this evening or tomorrow morning. And if you want to look it over and if you have any questions or anything that you want to have answered at that, if you go to that training,
All right.
on the 9th, you can ask those questions then.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to the principal's report, Janet.
Principal's report's pretty short and sweet this month. Just a reminder that people are interested in being at the PTA. Those meetings are always the first Wednesday of the month here in the library, and all are welcome. Took a picture of the soccer game we had. It was really great having it during the day. So parents, community members, teachers, and the whole school went down. Superintendent also was there and to cheer our team on. Yay, they won. And we might be doing it again this week coming up. No, next week, on Tuesday. Vinyl Haven might be coming back here for some pre-playoff action. So go JVS team. It was really fun. I loved seeing the whole school down there. Kids were cheering everybody
That's
on.
very cool.
It was really great. So that was a fun school builder.
Some of the kids made signs. It was really
Yeah, it
cool.
was really fun.
Despite the weather.
I know. And then all of a sudden the rain came and we're like, what? It wasn't supposed to rain today. So that'd be fun to do that again. And I hope that's something that continues in the future. Just put in a little bit about classrooms really spending some time trying to take those cross-cutting standards, if this is a strong ELA standard and a science standard, and kind of merging those together with some of their field trips to coastal rivers. The one I put in was the example of 4th grade, went to learn about freshwater bugs. They are looking at the science aspect, but also a lot of reading and writing go together on that. And again, at 7th grade, they read the short story, The White Heron. And then again, we're at coastal rivers, using that outdoor education to kind of tie the science and the reading together. And I know I'm going to put you on the spot, Jesse, like your class went on a field trip today, all about STEM. So we have a lot of opportunities that really focus on merging those cross-cutting standards, like I said, strong science connections. So I don't know if you want to say anything about.
Yeah, 3rd grade. Bridget and I actually last year met with we went to the Waldo Theater and we met with her, I think it was a PD.
Yeah.
Last year we got to go, it was like we went on an adult field trip to all these different places that offered things for kids. And the Waldo Theater has quite a few different things. So today, 5th grade and 3rd grade went to a STEM magic show, which was really cool. And he would do a magic trick and have it says magic on his big board in the back, and then he would do the science of that magic trick, which was a little over the 3rd grade's head, but they were like, wait, what? How did this? So I need to buy some lemons so we can turn on a light with some lemons, because that was a fan fave. But it was really cool, and the kids I think enjoy. I think also it helps. It's all right, you're going to be in public. We need to know that you're representing our school. You're representing 3rd grade. Let's figure out how to behave in public that way. So it was really fun. I loved it.
And
I know it's
coastal
free.
rivers, great.
Yeah.
So many of them
Yeah.
are free. So I'm looking for some of our open positions, some Title I literacy math teacher, PE and health, and special education. We had a little bit of an enrollment boost. We just had 5 or 6 new students just enroll. So we're upping our numbers a little bit. And then I didn't get to do one. Rode buses with a couple of the bus drivers and did their runs with them just to see what do you guys do every day after school. And that was great, to see the kids and ride their bus. And I have one more to go. So that's kind of fun. My principal's report.
So do we have 4 bus drivers now?
We have 3, 2 Jefferson employed bus drivers and 1 contracted because we can't get another one of our own that we hope for. So we're still advertising for bus drivers.
Because that wasn't listed as one of the positions, that's why I was wondering.
That's true. I should have asked that, but I refresh all the time on serving schools and bus drivers, special
Okay.
education ed techs. Bus driver is one of them. That was re-advertised probably 3 weeks ago. So
Okay.
it could probably time to refresh it.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah.
Moving on to the finance report. Peter, do you want to talk about budget?
Sure.
Thank you. And
Um,
welcome.
There are a couple parts. So we will check which one is there one listed first? I have a sort of next year's budget. Yeah, that's on here first. So I'll start with that, though the end of month isn't actually listed here. So actually, I would prefer to start with the end of month. And I brought that. This is the report that we've struggled so hard to get for everybody the last few months as we make the migration. And you have one here, and that's a major step in the right direction. But in all honesty, it took about 20 person hours to produce this report, which used to take about 7 or 8 seconds in the previous system. They won't always be that way. But what happened here is that with the new system and the new reporting, Aptifund hasn't gotten it quite right yet. And so I have to produce multiple reports, and then Becca, our accounts payable clerk, spends a good bit of time transferring the encumbrances to the report that also has the actuals. And then I had to go through and find, there's about 40 account codes that just showed up missing in the report, or 40 account lines that showed up missing in the report. And trying to find those like needle in a haystack. You're looking for, where's the $75,422.11 missing from special ed, et cetera. And so a lot of work diving in there to find what was missing, identify it. And then what the good news is that in producing it and getting it all in here, I was able to then go in Aptifund and assign it the right, they call them budget categories, so that they will appear in the future. So the 20 hours invested in producing this report is moving us in the right direction for the future reports significantly. So it's just a lot of data massaging of the actual budget lines for the current fiscal year, and really for all fiscal years coming up that will follow, because we will roll almost all of these. We also had some good success in the last month working directly with Vice President of Aptifund, Vice President for support, and explaining why this was such a challenge to us to not have what we need. And he elevated it to a development issue for them, so that they are going to try to tackle it. What they say to be they usually do a quarterly release at the end of the quarter, meaning the end of December. But this year, for this problem, that they're going to try to do one, which they're going to call a mid-quarter release, and he's hoping for early November to get this resolved. I don't think it's it doesn't seem to me like in a database system, you shouldn't be able to capture one more field and put it into a report with the others, but I'm sure they have a lot of things like that they're tackling. And, but here's a report that now does capture everything we budgeted on. There are still things that I need to clean up for the next time around. You'll find in here as you dive in, you'll see places, if you turn to the, it rolls, the regular instruction is page 1, and the back of page 1, and special ed begins at the top of the 3rd page. And it says O2, second article, special education instruction. And you'll notice that there's nothing in the budget for sped teacher salaries, ed tech salaries, and substitutes. But if you go down, and I had these highlighted in yellow for you, but the printer here didn't get the colors. If you go down toward the bottom of that section, you'll find that there's actually another account line for those. And I think that is because when the HR team was entering in this year's payrolls, there were multiple sped teacher lines that existed, and they didn't choose the same one that I had budgeted in. So there's things like that I'll continue to clean up. But if you look at the bottom of each cost center, where you get the totals, et cetera, it does all add up to where we are actually, or where we were at the September 17th warrant that was done. We just did another warrant, but there would have been no 20 hours since Friday to turn this around. So, this is the, you can start seeing what's going on, and, Wayne, I know you like to look at these. If you see things that, anything that you want to flag for me there's a lot in here that can be flagged and can be, reviewed, and that's what I'll be doing, but any, further eyes on that would be helpful. For example, I see that we have some encumbrance for $55,000 right in the second line here for ed tech salaries, but we didn't have any regular instruction ed tech. So if you look at the special ed techs, it seems to me that probably 2 ed techs are miscoded as regular ed instead of special ed. So there's a lot of work to be done here, which I am doing, but we are now actually able to put a report in front of you that shows the status of the finances.
So the expenses, the totals at the bottom are accurate.
Budget, yes, they are. Okay, I might find as I go through an encumbrance or two that didn't end up here appropriately, or an actual that didn't report. But for the things that I was finding that were not in here cleanly at the beginning were tiny little, they're kind of the minutia of the budget. They are, they're not the big heavy hitters. The heavy hitters are all in here, and you'll see that.
Right.
And it won't be long before I have the next version of this, because I'm going to try to test it right away with the warrant we just finished Friday, to see if everything that I corrected up until about an hour ago, is holding here. And so I promised last time I'd send another revision out. There wasn't time to do that. But if I am able to get your revision between now and the next meeting that has, more information, I will do that, because I know you'll find things that will only help improve the process.
And so do you find things healthy at the stage we're in right now within the budget?
Well, absolutely. I think, I look at the big lines and make sure that we haven't missed people and things like that, and all that looks good to me. There's still a long way to go in the year, and but I don't think we haven't. One of the things that we still don't have, we still have a lot of unfilled positions, I believe. And we're using some contracted services for that, and that seems to be cost efficient for now. That's something that we really need to monitor going forward. I've seen those things skyrocket sometimes in other schools when you just start out thinking it's going to go in a certain direction, and it ends up with just more use of the services than not. So that's something to put a good rein on and watch that. But it is actually improving the ability to deliver the services that the school set out to deliver. So it's something to watch. But I don't see anything in here that alarms me. We didn't overspend. I think we're actually behind in spending. The overall, I think we are not that far along in getting everything we need for the year. So we haven't rushed out of the gate too fast, which is only good, as long as we get everything we need now. We can continue to keep pace with the rest of the year. But the positions, we're in good shape with. The budget process this year was so thorough and judicious that there is the appropriate funding in here to provide the intended mission of the organization and the operations. And there's no lines that have exceeded that out of the gate in the first quarter.
26 scenarios.
25, 26 scenarios. Are we ready to move on to that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, as discussed about the last meeting of the AOS board, the idea of putting together a 7-town ESC is now off the table. And it is my understanding that Great Salt Bay is working they have a withdrawal plan that they are preparing to deliver to the commissioner. I've participated in discussions about that, both with Lindsay and Drummond Woodson. And while the timeline is tight to meet the goals of withdrawing, the stated goal of withdrawing from the AOS this year, well, the timeline's tight, and there may be hurdles to make that possible to happen because of just the timeline. Drummond Woodson is fairly confident that the commissioner will, in light of everything that they are looking at, agree to the withdrawal plan that GSP puts forth and allow them to withdraw as early as the end of this year. But again, we are on a very tight schedule to move forward. And as early as next week, I need to deliver a first draft of the AOS 93 FY26 budget. And at this moment, I don't know how many towns are in there. I don't know what the configuration of that is. So, Todd Lindsay and I have been discussing, just doing more than one budget to present different scenarios. And that is where, my current direction lies. We were approached the other day by Bristol and South Bristol because they're in their reorganization committee, had questions about what the different things might be. So I began to work on a plan to share with all the boards at this meeting. And there's some information in here that there's not a lot of new information here, but there's a couple ideas here that you see at the top that I'd like to talk to you about. So it is possible. One of the things that we might face, or one of the situations we might, kind of live in this time next year, is that we're still in a 7-town AOS because GSB wasn't able to jump through the hoops fast enough and to meet all the deadlines that the DOE puts in front of them to withdraw as fast as they would like. So it may be no choice but that they're with us another year. I have no idea which way that's going to go. Another model that we might be in is that they are able to withdraw, and then we have a 4-town, and I write 4 MSU model here, a 4-town AOS, Jefferson, Noblesboro, Bristol, and South Bristol. And going with the current cost sharing formula, I recalculate this year's budget minus the Great Salt Bay direct costs of the superintendent and associated costs of just the superintendent office, but leave in everything else. And that was at Todd's direction, the understanding that until we have direction to take things out, we are just modeling, keeping the status quo of a fully staffed office. So just for apples to apples here, this year to last year, you take out Great Salt Bay, leave everything else in below, and you get to a budget of $1,091,000. You can see that the approved budget we're working with now is $1,365,000. So it doesn't take out that much, but it takes out the second superintendent and associated costs. Going with the current census-driven cost-sharing formulas, the percentages here, 29.82% for Bristol, et cetera, down to 37.7 for Jefferson would be the percentages of share in the AOS. And again, on a $1.091 million budget, you can see the costs that would be associated with that in a 4 MSU municipal school unit AOS model. And you can see the year costs will go up $100,000. Again, the only thing that we've removed here is let me just double check one thing. We have removed I have removed the superintendent, the second superintendent, and double check one thing. Yeah, and I've reduced the IT director. I've removed the IT director effectively, but have put in stipends, which we're now giving to Chase here and to Reed and Noblesboro to provide cybersecurity and end user device support for the central office, which they're getting because we don't have anybody in that position. Chase is handling all AOS cybersecurity on a $15,000 annual contract with the central office, because that isn't something we could go without. And I've left those stipends in here, but the position is eliminated. And the second superintendent is eliminated, health insurance and all that, and professional development, et cetera. Whether or not you can cut further is the conversation of the future, but I didn't want to, we're not getting to that just yet. But just to start with these kind of comparisons, these are the resulting costs. Your cost goes up $100,000, and you can see what the others would. You can see still we have the situation where South Bristol they were paying 74, they'd only be paying 98. Well, you guys are paying 411. That's the, the inequity that I believe is in the current system, because we'll spend just as much time talking to them about this, next week as we are talking to you about it. And things generally take almost the same amount of time, no matter how many students you have to run the central office. And we've been, kind of wrestling with how to get around that for a long time. So I have also shown here a 4MSU new cost sharing formula. That's what CSF stands for. And that's if everybody pays exactly the same. And in that scenario, your costs go down, $40,000. And everyone else's pretty much goes up, except for Bristol, they come down a little bit as well. But, South Bristol goes up $180,000. Now, the big thing here that I think you need to understand is that South Bristol and Bristol are very concerned about being in the minority in the AOS. So much so that I think they may be easily convinced to pay this money for this kind of cost sharing formula. However, this kind of cost sharing formula is not allowed in an AOS, to my understanding from talking to Drummond Woodson. An AOS is driven by the statute that says it has to be census driven, so we have weighted voting. So, and I just rather not even say this right now, but you could consider forming an ESC for the 4 towns that would allow you to charge everybody the same. And in this case, you don't have to share superintendent. So it'd be my suggestion that you actually put the superintendent and special ed in the ESC with everything else, one big package. And the superintendent in that case is the executive director. And so it's the same model you have now for the management of the organization, but you have equal voting for everybody. And you have a cost share that is far more equitable than what we've been experiencing right now. And Jefferson would save, some money. Noblesboro would, get hit a little bit, quite a bit, and I don't know how much they'd like that. But I think South Bristol could be convinced that this is in their best interest. I don't know that. I don't speak for the people of South Bristol, but I do know that they're very committed to their independence and their voice. And so that would be a discussion to have directly with them.
Well, this is really a discussion the AOS board is going to have. So.
Right. What Todd asked me to do was we didn't want to start, Bristol and South Bristol were asking questions that we had to answer, and we didn't want to just be answering them and not sharing it with everybody. So we want to make sure everybody was seeing where the discussion is coming up around different places. What if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? So this is not a proposal. This is nothing, but here's some numbers to give you something to start thinking about. And they're very different. And there's probably some ways to look at it differently as well that we haven't gotten to yet. But the concern that we have is that we do need to come up with a budget. And I don't think there's any option but to come up with it, voted on by the taxpayers in about 10 weeks, to December 20th when we have our annual meeting. And that's short time to look at all this and decide how you want to move forward.
It's too short a time.
Right.
Because if you're going to try to form another ESC differently, we'd have to vote in order to get it in
Correct.
time, in order to get the subsidies and stuff. So we're in the same boat we was in, last year.
Right.
So, and this would require an amendment to the AOS, which is a very time consuming.
We understand.
So
There's no disputing any of that. That's why.
that formula there is not to be considered for this budget moving forward, because there's no way you could make it work with this budget cycle.
That is true. We don't expect it to be this budget that it would happen.
Okay.
But I think that these questions are going to get asked before we can commit to any budget. What could it look like? I think that the folks in Bristol and South Bristol are resigned to the fact that they're going to be in an AOS for a period of time that where they don't have that strong a vote. I think they understand that.
Well, they'd had a vote similar to before.
Correct.
So
I don't want to weigh in on the sort of dynamics of it. I'm just sort of putting out some numbers because the discussion needs to get started. And I think numbers can drive the beginning of a discussion. We need some direction on how to budget. I think the two budgets that currently I'll bring forward, unless we get some other request, are one for a 7-town AOS and one for a 4-town AOS. under the existing formulas of cost sharing.
I would assume that Great Salt Bay is going to be voting whether they're going to withdraw or not at their next school board meeting, from what I understand. That's what it sounded like at the workshop that they did, because they are up against the timeline of submitting to DOE so that DOE can put together the budgets for fiscal year 26. So for the same reasons we would have had to vote it on an ESC this month, they would also need to vote on whether they were going to withdraw or not this month, if they wanted to get the funding set up for the fiscal year 26 appropriately. And so once we know that, and I'm pretty sure, I think everybody agrees that, especially since they're gonna become an RSU on July 1, that the DOE probably will not have a problem approving their withdrawal plan to take effect on July 1. And so then the question becomes, if they're not going to be part of AOS 93 for the budget for fiscal year 26, they shouldn't be participating in the budget discussions for AOS 93 for the remaining 4 towns for fiscal year 26, because they're going to be wanting to put together their own central office budget within their RSU for that time period of fiscal year 26. So that's kind of how I would envision it breaking out, is the 4 towns will put together an AOS 93 budget, and Great Salt Bay would put together their RSU budget for fiscal year 26. Again, all have to be put together within November to be voted on in December for the AOS, but that's how I would see it play it out.
That is probably the most likely scenario, with the caveat that they still may not be able to get everything that they need to in time to move this year.
Right.
And they're aware of that. They acknowledge that it's going to be that there's a lot of hurdles there that they have to get through. It's a very difficult process, and it takes consensus, as you know, throughout the community. And if you move too fast, you can, lose the consensus. So I think they're just being very careful.
Yeah, well, it could be. I assume the superintendent's been in communications with them on this process right along, so they know where they are in the process and what they need, because they haven't been discussing this withdrawal since last month. They've been discussing and looking into it for quite some time, so I'm sure they know what the hurdles and timeframes are, and DOE's probably expecting it, so.
Yep, that's all true. But we just don't have that direction tonight.
Right.
Anything else for you?
I have not.
Student transportation is on here.
That's,
Yep, that's me.
Okay,
I got those next 2.
Yeah.
okay,
We just thought they fit under this category.
okay.
So I was asked to talk about MOUs or MOAs, memorandums of understanding or memorandum of agreement. And that's pertaining to students, when we either send students out from our school to another school, be it in the district or outside of the district, or vice versa, students come in. And what's the protocol for that, or what are the considerations that go into play for that? The first thing that's always considered is the impact on staffing. Is the staffing adequate, or is this additional student going to pose undue hardship? Is it going to take away from education that may be occurring for the students that are already in the program? And usually it's a specific program is the reason for this to happen, where a school has a strength in a special needs area. So that would be the first consideration. And if there is going to be any undue hardship, or it's going to pose any strain or additional stress on the receiving school, then it would stop right there. If the school believes it can be handled, then we look at other things, such as what are additional supports that may be needed. And that cost goes to whatever the sending school would be. So if we have to bring in OT services or something of that nature, that would be a cost that would be the school that would be sending would assume. Transportation, this is different from the other transportation question that's on here, but transportation of the student to the school would be that school's responsibility as well. So the cost is not incurred. There should be no cost incurred to the receiving school. And if there was an additional cost, the school that is sending should be the one would be the one that's paying that. If you get to the point with the MOU and that's not occurring, you can cease an MOU. You can stop the MOA or MOU, and the service would stop, and the home district would then assume responsibility of either trying to provide the education on their own or finding another source for that education to occur. And that is how MOUs and MOAs work.
Okay.
Transportation was another question. Why might we be paying transportation for a student to travel X? We're such a small school, I'm gonna try to be very vague with my descriptors, but there are a couple of reasons why that may happen. One is a homeless situation. McKinney-Vento is the term what covers our homeless students. So what the goal is always to keep the student in a homeless situation in their current setting, because there's already enough upheaval going on in the student's life that consistency is something they may need. I'll share an example from one of my previous districts. We had that situation. Student was staying in Lewiston, and I was actually going to a student at Mount Abram High School up in the Salem Township. That would have been pretty unrealistic for the transportation, so we came up with a way to get work back and forth, and it was during the pandemic, so there was some virtual stuff going on as well. But that student remained our student. Had that student wanted to participate, then travel would have had to have been provided. How does it work with McKinney-Vento? The district in which the student is residing, even though they're considered homeless, it's the district where they are. In one of my other settings, I had a student that was staying in a hotel in Winthrop, and they were busing the student to us to Garden when I was as a building administrator in Garden. So our district, Gardner, would picked up 50% of it. The residing district where the student was staying at that particular time would pick up the other 50% of it. So that's how it works with a homeless student. Now, it can be determined that it is not in the best interest of the student to stay in this district in which they're residing. And an issue may come up if attendance just completely drops off and they're just not coming to school anymore because of their situation. That may be a reason to say, no, you're in this community, the bus goes right by the hotel you're in. It's in your best interest or in the student's best interest to go to school in that particular district. But there has to be a reason that would make that district a more suitable location for the student. Mm-hmm. That's McKinney-Vento, that's homelessness. Occasionally we'll run into a placement where DOE may place a student in a setting somewhere and say that the student should maintain in the school. It's treated just like a McKinney-Vento. Mm-hmm. And same rules would apply. Students residing in, let's say it's Belfast, and they want to continue to come to Jefferson. Then there would be that dual responsibility of providing transportation if, in fact, the student was placed. When a student is identified as special ed, there is financial support from the state for that. But if a student is not identified as special ed, then the two districts pick up the full cost of doing that transportation. That's how transportation would work if you had a student placed, foster services or something like that, or if you had a student who was considered to be homeless.
Can you say that again? If they were homeless or state
Well, the
placed?
state places them in foster home.
So who pays for that transportation again, or who is required to provide
If it's
that?
special ed, you'll get support from the state. If the student is not identified as special ed student, the two districts, the district where the student is placed and the district where the student is going to school.
Okay, so both towns
Both
basically
towns.
are responsible for the transportation.
Yeah.
Okay,
50-50.
okay. And then superintendent's agreements is something.
Superintendent's agreements, there is no transportation cost associated because when you have a superintendent's agreement, the family, that's when an agreement is made with a particular family. They'll say, well, my child is having a bad experience in this district or in this school, wants to go to this school, or maybe you have a student who's been in your school for 6 years, they move, and the parents would like them to finish this. I'm making up situations here now, but and so if it's close to anything, it's just purely coincidental. But the parent would say, no, they've been in that school for 6-7 years. We'd like them to finish out in that school. They may request a superintendent's agreement. Whenever I get a superintendent's agreement, the first thing I'll do is what is the history? So I will look at that. And if it's a superintendent's agreement that's been approved for 6 years or something, I would lean towards approving that. If the student, we've had some in another community where a home's being built and the student's currently going to that, they're going to be moving into the home mid-year. They would like the student to start in the district that they're going to be moving to as they go forward. So that would be a consideration. And I always reach out to the building administrator and just say, is this, again, I go back to the hardship. Is a student, additional student in this grade, if you have a small class, the additional student may not create any additional expense. But if you have a class size that's huge and you put a student in there who's going to require another ed tech or something like that, that would be a reason to say no, because it's putting a financial burden on the receiving district. So that's how, and then get back to your question. Once it's approved, it is the family's responsibility to get the student to the school. Now, I've known families that have taken the student to a bus stop but the bus is not being expected to go out of their way to pick up the superintendent agreement student. So then they may be riding a bus in or something, but the transportation, there is no cost to the receiving district when it's a superintendent's agreement. I will say the state has the pendulum has really swung pretty considerably in that even superintendent's agreements that have been getting denied, they used to be, once they were denied, it was pretty much the state would support you. And I shouldn't say the state, the DOE still does for the most part support that, a superintendent's agreement, but the parent can then appeal to the State Board of Education. State Board of Education has been showing a tendency to reverse superintendent's denials and allow students to attend. And then it is out of the superintendent's hands.
I just so you know, this board's discussed superintendent's agreements before. We've never been in favor of any superintendent's agreements because we don't want to increase the class size, because we're always told the smaller class size, the better for the students. And we don't want to put any other workload on the teachers, even if they got a smaller class. So.
I think we tightened up the language a few years ago on that.
Well, for what we could do, but we don't have any authority over the superintendent.
No, but I thought there was a policy that we worked on a few years ago.
Not that could restrict the superintendent's hand on that, because that's between.
You're not the only, I will say you're not the only town in the district that feels that way. I mean, the rest that feels that way either.
So. Okay, that's good, because I saw some transportation billings, and nothing was making sense to me, so this clears it up, which is great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, moving on, facilities, John, anything to report?
No, everything's running great. We're moving into the heating season. We'll probably be firing wood boiler, hopefully to the end of this week. Get that up and running. Everything's going along. Other than that, everything's going along quite well. Everything's running. Haven't had any major breakdowns.
Fully stocked with pellets? We're fully stocked with pellets?
We will be tomorrow. We'll be tomorrow.
I am envious of that report, John.
I know, right? The only thing we're having some trouble with is the playground at night. We've had some issues in the playground, damage to the playground. It's really hard to see the playground on the infrared cameras, so we're looking at putting lighting in it.
Motion sensor lights.
Motion sensor lighting. Looking at several different options. I'm gonna try to go with either a solar system so we don't have to run power out to it. It cuts the cost by 75%.
So, I'll speak with the night shift supervisor tomorrow to, I saw the video today, and they're gonna have some of the guys on this side come and use the parking lot for a good spot to write reports and things like that, so other than just doing another check if they can. So
Yeah.
I'll speak with the supervisor tomorrow.
That'd be great.
Good to see you.
So you think this is footwork vandalism, people walking in, not dirt bikes or cars or
Yeah,
anything
you
like
can,
that?
you can kind of make out the people, but not enough for any
Right.
kind of identification, but they're older.
Oh, really?
They're not
not-
going here to school.
Right.
Put it that way.
Non-students?
Non-student.
That makes me feel better, sorry.
Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
All right, moving on to old business. I'm gonna pass that off to
You
you.
want me to speak to that?
Yep.
I think Wayne did a great job of explaining what happened, what transpired at the last AOS board meeting. And what was decided is, as Lindsay and I were talking, as opposed to just voting tonight and saying no and shooting down the ESC, we wanted some kind of an official motion, but knowing what Peter had shared about the possibility down the road of perhaps the remaining 4 towns wanting to re-engage in discussions around an ESC, be it as presented previously or in a different format, we thought it would be best to, at this point, have the boards all make a formal motion to table the ESC discussions until the date where they may want to be revisited. And what that does is it also frees up Peter's time to be focusing on all the budgetary stuff and things that he needs to take, because he's put a huge amount of time into the ESC work. And that completely puts it off to the side until we may need to revisit it.
So if we voted no now, we can't bring the subject up again.
You
in
probably
the future?
could. I mean, this is real.
I think there's one other point that.
Yeah, please.
When we talked last week, you intended to make. It's actually nothing to vote on. There is not an interlocal agreement that everybody wants to be voted on.
Mhm.
We couldn't reach that consensus through the 7 towns. So we are not able to present you with a document to approve or disapprove.
Well, then there's nothing to table.
The notice of the table was, I think, just so there was some
Closure for the
official
minutes.
record that the boards had.
We was told we was gonna have to vote on this in October. And I think everybody at the AOS board, when we discussed it, decided that we should still go ahead and vote because there should be a record of who's in favor and who's not in favor. That was what was discussed at the AOS board, if you remember correctly. And I don't see why voting no on the current ESC proposal at this time has any hindrance on one that would
I
come
don't-
back to the board next year
I don't think it
whatsoever,
was.
especially if it was formed by the 4 towns. And actually, you could probably pick up that same document and strike Great Salt Bay's names from that document and continue on if that's what you chose, with some more tweaking or whatever. But to vote on the one that everybody's been working on so long and was told was gonna have to vote on in October, seems to me like that would be the right thing to do, to put closure to this ESC with the way it's currently written and the way everybody's reviewed it and looked at it, and all the time that's been spent in it, say no, not this one with these 7 towns, the way it's been presented. It's clear, cut off, this one is done. So I make a motion that the town of Jefferson vote not to join the Educational Service Center
For 7 towns.
for the 7 towns that's
I'll
been
second
presented.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Did you get that motion, Will?
We should include the 7 towns.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing the minutes again.
Moving on to new business.
This was just really, the policy review part was an update for the board, and it was because you brought it to our attention. Currently on your website, when you go to the website and you look at policies, all the policies aren't there. And I wasn't really. aware why
Policies that are there
was.
are the ones that are mandated,
Correct.
correct?
Those were the ones that had been reviewed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go have on the website as soon as possible at some point here. I'm going to have, not, because those you click on them now and it takes you right to the policy. The ones that there are still policies that are old, that are not mandated, that have to be reviewed.
Mhm.
Policy review takes a while. I don't know if any of you were involved in it before. It takes quite a while. It needs to be done, but it's not something we're going to get done in the immediate future, especially with budget stuff starting now. So I did speak to legal counsel, and the suggestion was that I will go on and I will put these other additional policies are located in binders right now. But these are other additional policies that Jefferson has, but are yet to be reviewed and updated. And I'll list them all so people will know that the policy is there. Because this is what came up. We had someone reference a policy that you go to the website and it's not there. So I think when you initially reached out to me, I said, no, it's not here. That was until we realized that these other policies exist in binders, in paper copies. So I will go on and I will put that these policies are currently on the books. They are in need of review. And as they get reviewed, we'll bring them onto the page and make them active. Doesn't mean that they're still not policies that you have. You still have these policies. But they're just so old in many cases.
Oh, yeah.
But the question came up about one of the policies, and I got it memorized, IJOA.
I know.
And there was some, I would say, some language that concerned me when you shared it with me, and I think you have some concern. And I think this is one that you probably want to act on sooner rather than waiting for these other policies. When I say waiting, it's probably going to be a summertime project, but people will at least know that the Jefferson School Board has these policies, and that you can get them. You're just going to have to reach out to the school. Do you have copies here?
Yes.
To the school or to central office, because I have a binder over at central office as well. And I guess that kind of leads us into the particular policy. I don't know if you want to share about how.
What, under new business, do you want to do the bus
Yeah,
under the new business?
Oh, you want to do that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was where I put the motion or the agenda adjustment that Wayne had requested. I did already on the template for the November meeting. I do have it on there, so it is coming up, but this is the bus reimbursement. Do you know what the November deadline, what the date for that is in November?
I did not.
I'm not sure, but I was thinking it was like in the 20th
I'll have to
range
look
or
on
something like that.
I'm looking up right now.
You can, okay. It'll definitely be after the meeting, the November meeting. But that will definitely be an agenda item on for the November for the board to take some action on.
Could we do it, why don't we just do it right now? And then,
You gotta get, that one's pretty good today.
The application deadline for the main DOE school bus program is November 25th. Applications open on November 1st each year.
so if we do the motion tonight, it'll be done, and then Peter can just do it whenever, as long as it's done by the 20th. That way we won't forget, or if we have a snowstorm, we don't have a meeting, or something happens, who knows? Things are crazy in the world right now,
So
so.
the application's open November 1st and the 25th was the,
Deadline.
But it just said when I looked it up.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's
That
as
sounds
good as
correct.
the last time they updated their website.
Since the first, close the 25th. Not moving on.
The, so you better pass a motion to purchase the bus. The specifics of the bus, will John provide those? Janet, the
Well, we'd make,
reservation request?
I think the motion would be to apply,
Right.
because we gotta get approved, we would only get approved next year, we wouldn't purchase till the year after.
I haven't done one of those in a few years. Did they ask, do you recall if they asked us like how many doors and windows and things, like all the details
I
that we
think
have?
they do.
Yeah, I think.
Okay,
To
so
do, and they
I just
may
wanna
even
make
ask the manufacturer too.
Wheelchair access and things like that. That's, I
Right.
just want to make sure that we get all that right. So I may need,
Yeah.
we're gonna need to get.
We
all
have the
those.
specs on them.
So so you could make a motion to move forward, realizing that the specs will be shared with you maybe at the November meeting or something.
Well, that doesn't matter, because all we're doing is making the motion I'll just make the motion. I move that we apply for the Department of Education bus reimbursement program, our bus number 1-14.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
1-14.
That's the correct one, right, John?
That is a correct one, yeah.
That qualifies, it's got the 125,000 miles and the number of years. And we'll apply, and then when they accept our application or deny it, we don't always win in the first round. Sometimes we have to apply 2-3 years for a bus. And then we can vote whether to accept that or not and actually buy the bus. That's a separate step down the road.
Andy, we get a second?
Yeah.
Was a vote made, taken?
Yep, 5.
Thank you.
Done, I can take it off the agenda. No, thanks, Wayne.
All right, moving on to policy. So this is the policy that was referenced and asked about this IJOA, it's about field trips. When I went out to the website to look for the policy, I didn't find it, long story short, we have one. And some of the verbiage in it was kind of questionable. The one that brought concern was there's a number 9 and it says the 8th grade class trip proposal will be presented via the principal at the October school committee meeting, which would be tonight. And speaking from past experience with an 8th grade, they don't know where they're going to go and or how much it's going to cost. So I guess I'd like to put IJOA, field trips and other student travel into first read, taking some of these things into consideration. Some of the other things, the principal will notify the chairman of the school committee in writing of approval of all field trips. So just kind of take a read of this, and if you could email, I guess me at this point, and Todd on any changes that you'd like to see made before we bring it into second read, so we can have Linda update that for us, that would be great. But those would be, some of the ones that I'd be looking at
Lindsay
specifically.
used to put it up so we could
Right.
go in and edit
In
it. Is that-
Google Docs,
Is
is
that
it
what
in
I'm looking
Google
right now? It's
Or
usually in a Google Doc.
Drive or something?
Yep, it's part
Linda
of
just
the.
got it out.
Okay,
type.
so it's in
So it
here.
should
So you
be,
can go in and strike and put your comments or whatever.
So we can do that.
That's what should be
It's in
set
that part.
yes.
Yep.
I'm meeting with her tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll find out.
So it's in our, she got it up there and at least typed so that we can see it.
Oh, yeah, I asked Linda to get it
Yeah.
up so it was visible, yeah. Oh, would she give you a copy, Wayne, or would she give you the actual policy to like, because we gotta have, I mean, we gotta maintain the current policy until the board
Right, no,
acts on
she
it.
posted the sample policy and then we will go in and edit it from that.
I think probably a copy of
So
that.
probably a copy of your current policy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then we can edit.
Yeah, as long
There's
as
a
it's
folder
one
out
of
there,
the,
I think, in our school board that says first reads,
as long as it's not like one of those 1986 policies.
2002.
There are some.
Yeah.
There
There
really
are
some.
some.
So. I don't know. if
I
that's
used
what
to
you
have
can
a
have
binder
those.
at my house.
Oh,
It was
the
horrid.
Jefferson binders, this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I
got-
used to
got-
have it at my
I
house.
got one still, I think. I'll make a motion, first read.
Some of them still said Union 51 on it.
Can I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
All in favor?
Did you get that one?
So the motion is to put it into first read?
Mhm.
And I will just say, most districts I've ever been in, they require a month advance notice for out of state or overnight trips. Month is usually enough, but if you wanted to go more than that, you could, but October, like you said, October for something that may happen in May, that's an eternity.
Right.
Yeah.
You
At
do.
this level.
Did you get that, Laura?
Mhm.
Thank you.
And that's not something the board has to approve either. We don't have to approve that trip.
Depends on
It's
what
out
our
of
policy
state.
says.
Yeah,
Yeah. it depends
yeah.
what the policy
Well,
says.
if they go out lately, they've been going on this thing, have
They
they?
haven't, they've been going, most recently, they've been going whitewater rafting,
Right.
but that isn't overnight, which is
Oh.
required for the approval.
Okay.
Moving on, so probably back in August's meeting, we had talked about putting a second public comment session, if anybody had public comment. Again, nobody signed up, but I don't think we went over anything throughout the agenda that would require it, but I will put it out there, see if anybody had
I
anything.
think what Wayne had said was that if there was a hot topic, if you will, something that was later in the agenda, it might be good for people to be able to speak either prior to or following, I can't remember if it was prior to or following, but any item that may generate a lot of public interest. So you could certainly, you can make an adjustment to your agenda any night and just say, because of this, I would recommend that we add another public
Well, if
comment.
we just leave it on there.
Or you
not
could just
do
leave it on
any
if you
harm,
want,
That way everybody knows
Can just
it's
leave it there.
it's a flowing
Yep.
expectation.
All right, I'm gonna move on then. Future board topics. Does anybody have anything that they would like to see at our next meeting that you know of?
I can think of.
You can always reach out to me.
Okay.
We meet about a week before the meeting,
Okay.
the three of us. And so you can reach out to any one of the three of us if that's something you want to make sure is added.
Okay, then we are going to move into executive session. If I can get a motion for moving into,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Time,
Set 6:50. 6:50.
should we wait another minute? We need to- There were no motions to take after we came out of executive session, so without objection, I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned at 7:20.
Very good.